Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Generational Evolution, How to Engage with Every Age. My name is Michelle Eisenberg, and I'm a program assistant at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. And for those of you who may not know, the NASDAQ Center is a nonprofit building a better path for entrepreneurs worldwide by improving inclusion, access, and knowledge in entrepreneurship. So as you will see in the chat in a moment, the NASDAQ Center provides programs, resources, and exceptional mentorship to entrepreneurs across all races, industries, and geographies. So definitely make sure to check out those links and resources in the chat. And then just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. First, let us know where you are dialing in from in the chat. We always love to connect. And second, we are going to open up for live Q&A at the end of the event. So please make sure to submit your questions for us in that Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation, and we will try our best to get to all of them. And of course, none of what we do could be possible at the center without all of the amazing support from our sponsors, including NASDAQ, Lehigh University, BMO, Airbnb, KPMG, Wilson Sonsini, Woodruff Sawyer, Microsoft Entrepreneurship for Positive Impact, BPM, and HubSpot for Startups. We are humbled by their contributions and hope you are grateful too. And so before we get started, we always like to launch just a couple polls to step back, see how everyone's doing today. This first one's going to ask, what is keeping you up at night? Finance, sales, marketing, scale, pivot, team, or surviving? And I'll give it just a few moments for folks to submit a response here. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. All right. We got folks from all over the place. All right. I'm going to go ahead and end this poll, share these results. All right. It looks like marketing is in the lead, fitting for our conversation today, but really split across the board. So thank you. We'll take this into account for future programming. And then we just have one other poll to go through today. How are you feeling? Fearful, anxious, surviving, or optimistic? Oh, that poll's not working, but feel free to leave it in the chat how you're feeling, fearful, anxious, surviving, or optimistic. Oh, there we go. All right. Launching that poll. How are you feeling? Fearful, anxious, surviving, or optimistic? Thank you for patience. All right, we got folks from Virginia, New Jersey, Mississippi, DC, India, Atlanta, New York, Florida, North Carolina, Alabama. Welcome, welcome, everyone. So great to have you all here. I'm going to end this poll and share these results. Glad to see optimism is in the lead. Always nice, but definitely have feelings of anxiety and surviving. Hopefully, some of our presentation today will help alleviate some of those feelings. So I'm going to stop sharing this poll, and without any further delay, please join me in giving the warmest welcome to our special guest, Rekha Gibbons, president at Generational Guru. Rekha, it's such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to pass it right over to you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Hello, entrepreneurs. It is exciting. I'm delighted to be your guest speaker today. And also thank you so much, NASDAQ Center, for inviting me to be your keynote speaker. I'm really excited to share some insights with the group. I believe we have a Q&A session at the end, so feel free to hold your questions till then, and let me just get rolling. All right, let me know if everyone can see this.
Yeah, looks good.
Looking good. All righty. So did you know that the average age of a successful startup founder is between 35 and 45? This actually is smack and it deflates the old perception that entrepreneurs are really young and only in their 20s. A conception that was, I think, propagated by Steve Jobs, by Bill Gates, by the young startups. This means that founders can emerge from any age group. And what's really exciting is investors can foster innovation by encouraging all different ages to pursue their dreams. Um, and what this also does is breaking down stereotypes with age can encourage inclusivity and diversity for these startups and brings contributions from all ages to the forefront. Today, we're talking about how to engage with every age to elevate your success in your business. First, let's talk a little bit about me. My name is Rekha Gibbons. I am the generational guru. I am a keynote speaker, advisor. What I do is I demystify how each generation is wired, how technology has wired them. I'm a Wall Street alumna. I worked at Lehman Brothers in the 90s and AIG during the financial crisis. I have seen 4 generations, 4 decades, pardon me, of marketing technology evolution from typewriters, manual typewriters, all the way to AI right now. And I have a slightly unique approach, and that is combining industrial psychology, which was my degree, with a corporate America business, 3 decades of experience working in corporate America, and also incorporating the teachings of business and metaphysical masters from Abraham Hicks to Zig Ziglar. I'm working on a book right now. It's called The OG's Guide to the Multi-Generational Workplace. Please connect with me. My website is rekhagibbons.com. Connect with me on LinkedIn and follow me on Instagram. So let's talk about marketing, okay, and how it's changed through the ages. There are 4 basic rules, okay? The principles have remained the same throughout time, but how we utilize them, how time has changed, and more importantly, how technology and channel that's used has changed. We'll see the evolution of how marketing has evolved over time. But what's interesting is the 15 minutes for a commercial, like "Where's the beef?" Iconic marketing moments have now become 15 seconds of influence. So I don't know if any of you remember this. Does anybody remember the Columbia House Record Club? Right? You get, it used to be 13 albums or cassettes for $1. And even before that, it used to be for a penny, which was crazy at the time. This is a brilliant ploy. It was a mail order, right? So it's from the mail, and you would see print ads. You'd get little BROC, business reply cards, and magazines and newspapers, and you pull it out, you fill it out, and send it to them, right? And it's brilliant because what they were doing back in the 70s and 80s is MGM, member get a member. And what they're doing is telling their best customers, hey, get free albums if you refer a friend. So you're getting 2 marketing ploys at the same time. You're getting a referral from a good member. Secondly, you're replicating a lookalike audience. That means your best audience is actually replicating themselves for you. You don't have to do any marketing. Today, fast forward, what we've got is the equivalent of rewards programs, word of mouth, refer your best customers, rewards programs, loyalty programs, inviting a friend, again, MGM. And to give you an example of how this is still pretty valuable today, Robinhood gives stock rewards for referring a member or referring a new customer. Charles Schwab gives you $1,000 per new customer referral, and Tesla gives you credits. So let's take a look. This is a huge graph created by a fantastic media agency called Avalanche, looking at the history of the world or marketing or even just media. For the longest time, it was print, right? It was books. It shot off to billboards. The radio kicked in 1922. Direct mail, certainly mailers, telephone kicks in, and then in 1941, we see the first TV ad. But you see in the 80s, 90s, explosion of different media channels, marketing technology, MarTech. It's just totally exploded. So what's fascinating to me is we are now in a digital renaissance. Remember the Renaissance? Renaissance actually means change. But the interesting thing is each generation had their own renaissance, and it was driven by the technology of their day. The silent generation had radio, boomers had television, computer was Gen X, internet millennials were smack in the middle of the internet, Gen Z was all about social media, and then AI is what Alpha is focused on, the youngest generation, the youngest cohort to this. What I want to impress on everybody is that every generation was an early adopter to the technology of its day. My dad was actually a silent gen, so he was electrical engineer. He knew how to take a television apart inside and out, change the picture tubes, test them, but he did not understand the concept and the language of a computer. I would sit with him for hours and hours trying to walk him through it. He wasn't an engineer, but for some reason, that technology just didn't resonate with him. But I do keep in mind, he was the early adopter to the tech of his day. Here is a massive chart. It's a lot of information on here. If anyone has questions about what generation is what, here you see each generation, the breakdown for them. We'll talk a little bit about the best way to market to each one of them. Get them money. There we go. So the silent generation, also known as traditionalists. I'm going to focus on the marketing side because there's so much information here. It's all about making life easier. They are focused, they are direct mail, they are print because that's what they're accustomed to. The boomers are all about customer service. It's all about the interaction in person. Word of mouth marketing for Gen X, email marketing, sure, go ahead. Millennials are brand message, and certainly digital marketing is inherent to them. Gen Z, also what I call this cohort Zoomers, are impacted by word of mouth marketing and influencer. Some interesting ideas to keep in mind with this cohort is that for the traditionalists, their news source was newspaper. For baby boomers, news source was television. For Xers, it was internet, cable news, right? They saw the emergence of 24/7 news. Millennials are all about the digital, the iPhone, and interestingly enough, Zoomers get their news source information from TikTok. I find that fascinating. All right, so then when we talk about each generation, what's important to understand is that the channel matters. And I know one of the questions we were talking about previously for when setting up this course was what's some important keys to remember when you're marketing to different generations? And that is that channel matters. Channels absolutely matter. For the silent generation, for traditionalists, handwritten notes. A lot of people joke about going to meetings and having a digital copy or having emailed. If you're dealing with somebody from an older generation, bring a paper copy just to have it, just to be safe. What really resonates with this cohort are thank you notes, formal thank you. I actually have one here that I received from a speaking engagement, and it really makes me happy getting a formal thank you note in the mail. Postcards, remember details of past encounters. Oh, how the kids doing? Remember the kids' names if you can. Remember what they like to drink. Ask about the dog. Boomers are traditional advertising. Thing to remember with them is they're all about one-to-one. They like in-person or by phone, but they like that one-to-one interaction. Gen X, we're the first generation that started kicking into, I'm not so interested for working to live. I want, to live to work. I want to actually have a life. So the work-life balance is super important to them. Absolutely do not bother me outside of work. You can email and text me. Millennials are distanced from personal interaction because they were so immured and immersed in digital, the computer, internet. They prefer instant messaging over in person. We'll talk about that in a bit. They also have a fear of answering the phone, which we'll talk about in a bit. Gen Z is technology inherent. Obviously, they prefer technology, preferably this guy right here, to personal interaction. What's interesting with the Gen Z is they prefer immediate response, immediate feedback if you're working with them, and immediately after what they do. So if it's creating an infographic, if it's creating a chart for a meeting, sending them a text immediately saying, that was amazing, you did so great, is the way to go. All right, so we talk about channel and we talk about messaging. Let's talk about uniqueness in messaging. Yvon Chouinard, the founder and president of Patagonia, uh, placed this ad on Black Friday in 2011 in the New York Times. It was a full page ad, and it said, do not buy this jacket. He went on to say, listen, don't buy this jacket because it takes this much money, this much water to create. It takes this much CO2 to create this jacket. He kept reinforcing the Patagonia mission statement, which is all about sustainability and green. And he says, you know, we build the best product, cause no unnecessary harm, solutions for environmental crisis. Crazy enough, even though he's saying, do not buy this jacket, sales rose by 30%. This is a message to the entrepreneurs out there who are focused on green sustainability, anything that has messaging for human rights, human justice. When you share your mission statement and make it passionate, and you share it with the world, they will respond. As Chouinard says, every time I made a decision that's best for the planet, I make money. And by the way, he is a multi-billionaire. He gave majority of the money from Patagonia to a small outfit that is all about sustainability. It's a foundation that uses Patagonia money for green, sustainable initiatives. All right, let's talk a little bit about how each of the generations are wired. Okay, so here we have, obviously, Mr. Buffett. This cohort lived through World War II. They benefited from industrialization, certainly a boys' club, absolutely a boys' club. Um, Not very integrated culturally. They're interested in deal making. How can I win? How can I win? The technology of their day, iconic technology, Victrolas, that big, huge TV console. They experienced LPs, albums, vinyl, 75, 78, 45s, different musical styles. Interesting for this cohort is news to them meant 6 o'clock, three different channels, because there were only three channels, except for public broadcasting. There would be an anchorman, and that person would tell them what was happening in the world. And because of the trust factor, because they knew they were trustworthy, the information they were being given was news, these people were held up as luminaries. Also interesting, the source of other sources of news for getting information, library. There was no Google. The Encyclopedia Britannica was probably how they would have to go to the library to do their papers, to do their research. Also, automobile was iconic for them. It created the sexual revolution. How? It gave people a place to have sex outside of the house. Interesting here is what we start finding out is that technology starts to alter the brain with each new advance in technology. So there is a scientist named Dr. Norman Doidge who wrote a book called The Brain That Changes Itself. He talks about and reports in the 60s, which is about the time when the television became a permanent fixture in American homes. He starts talking about the teachers in classrooms would say all of a sudden that my kids are showing me they're getting restless. They can't sit still. They're not paying attention. Even the really good students who were great students started showing signs of ADD. And that was exactly the time when television was the screen in American living rooms. So we're seeing the beginnings of how technology is changing the brain, and it's called neuroplasticity. Baby boomers, post World War II, yay, we're not going to kill each other. Saw the transition, does anybody know what this red device is? It's called a rotary phone. And that typewriter thing, that was a electric typewriter, word processor. The thing that is iconic about this generation is life experience. They went through the cable evolution. I want my MTV. I remember when MTV kicked in because I wanted to watch it. So MTV, Fox, HBO, VHS, these kicked in. The cable revolution occurred in the 80s and 90s. Music videos. Previously, album covers were iconic and definitive status symbol and sex symbol in music. And all of a sudden, album covers were obsolete. Music videos became the big thing. Again, how we get information, it was through the library, encyclopedias, and a thing called microfiche. Yuppies were thriving at this point, and yuppies were young urban professionals. They are men and women who were in the workforce, had self-reliant jobs. Women in particular were very interesting during this time because they were in the workforce making their own money. They could subsist on their own. They could have a boyfriend, or they could say, no, I'm just going to date around. I'm having fun, because they were self-sufficient. I can have a job and a boyfriend as well if I want. The onset of the musical evolution with the Sony Walkman, CDs kicked in. So technology took this generation and wired its brain even further. A little bit of humor, boomer humor, is respect your parents because they passed school without Google. Okay, so here let's talk about Gen X. They were the first generation to start working in the computer age. The concept of slacker generation, grunge, Nirvana, headbanging, sardonic humor is their how they're known. If you can read this right here, yesterday I ate the clock. It was very time consuming, especially when I went back for seconds. They were kind of the middle child caught between boomers and millennials, or also called the lost generations, because their parents were absent. They were doing long hours at work. So the kids would come home from school. They were responsible for maybe making their own snacks, their own care. And what became their best friend? The television. And this showed them a little bit further of how to actually be on their own. Also, they experienced a huge onset of the gaming industry, and that in particular changed their brains even more, because we'll see in a few slides that the reward mechanism starts kicking in with gaming. So this all modified their brains even further. What that did with the video games in particular, the distraction factor increased. Okay, so millennials, they grew up in the age of the internet. They came on the work scene after Y2K, which is the turn of the century, also known as the Armageddon clock, where finance and outlets were terrified that because clocks weren't set to go past 2000, that the world would end, everything would just die. It didn't happen, of course. They experienced news, that whole anchor news paradigm, become 24/7. They saw the Gulf War on TV. 24/7 means, there was absolutely no shift between what I see on television in terms of being newsworthy. So they saw the shift from news to infotainment. The career mindset previously was working hard. I'm going to work for 50 years. I'm going to get my gold watch and I'm going to retire. And they're like, no, no, no. They saw their parents. They experienced what happened to them. They saw the financial meltdown of 2008, and they realized what it did to their parents, which is, I worked this hard. I still lost my savings. I still lost my retirement. So salary is no longer an incentive. There was a shift in to live rather to work. Personal data, behavior becomes valuable. And of course, the iPhone just totally flipped the world on its side. So this young man, Mosiah Bridges, appeared on Shark Tank famously as a teenager and won a deal from Damon Johns. Uh, youngest generation, by the way, his business was creating bow ties. He actually designed a bow tie for President Obama. Never knew a life without a smartphone, without the internet, without social media. And so what we're going to see here is that the social rewards that were tied in to a like, a tag, a comment, a thumbs up, actually feeds a hormone in the form of dopamine and serotonin. So they're getting addictive to these social interactions, and not getting that social interaction causes depression, anxiety, and also lack of concentration. This is also why this generation is the most generation currently in our workforce. We talked about yuppies. Guess what? The yuppies grew up, they had children, and these kids became these Gen Z, the Zoomers. The helicopter parent mentality is because parents were, I worked hard, I know what it feels like to be in the workforce. I want my kid to have everything. I don't ever want them to have a bad moment. And hence, they didn't allow the children to fail. So we see, the helicopter parent paradigm that you hear being talked about is probably a contributing factor. This cohort also experienced COVID, lockdown, isolation during the most formative years of their lives. A lot of them actually graduated from college and entered the workforce during COVID, which means they're missing a big, big factor, and that is mentorship. AI is probably their iconic technology. AI at the beginning was first vying for the ability to be engagement, information. Now it's vying for companionship. It's not just, oh, I want to be there for you. I want to be there for you when everybody goes to sleep, all your friends are gone, your parents are asleep. I'll be there for you. So let's talk a little bit then about what we think entrepreneurs need. Okay, so obviously a passion for what you do, for what you love, investors, the ability to network, to have relationships, develop relationships. What's interesting though here is a differentiator for entrepreneurs is going to be your own personality, whatever product or service that you are sharing with the world. I love this quote from the Oracle of Omaha. Entrepreneurship is like sex. You're not going to learn about it. You just have to get out there and do it. So we're talking about this differentiator. Okay, so as an entrepreneur, uniqueness is your secret weapon. Okay, the way you are different and what you are bringing with your business. But don't take my word for it. This is Pi, the personal AI assistant. It was created by Mustafa Suleiman, co-founder of DeepMind Google. He is a serial tech entrepreneur. He dropped out of college. His father was a cab driver, so he did not come from a huge amount of wealth. His passions were human rights, the ability to navigate social problems, conflict resolutions, and his clients became United Nations and World Wide Fund for Nature. He created this assistant with the ideal of, let me be your personal assistant. So I asked the question, well, how do I create a unique personality? Okay, and their response, Pi's response was, embrace your individuality. By the way, if you are interested in AI, this is a lot of fun. Let's talk a little bit about influencers who found their passion. I don't know how many of you know Jay Shetty. He is one of the highest ranked influencers. He's a multimillionaire. He took a couple years off when he graduated from college, and he traveled the world. He became a monk. He chased down what his life purpose was, and then he shared it with the world. It turns out that people really are attracted to that. People wanted to hear about him being a monk. And then he transferred all that information about chasing purpose to do celebrity interviews with Michelle Obama, across the board, massive amounts of interviews. So it became his iconic stamp, sharing his passion for how I found my purpose. The Oracle of Delphi says, know thyself. Socrates translates that to know thy measure. Well, Professor Gibbons here, and I come from Mahwah, New Jersey, so you can call me the Oracle of Mahwah. And I say, know thy treasure. Understand what makes you unique. Understand that your DNA, how you are wired, is unlike anybody else on this planet. And that is what is going to differentiate you as an entrepreneur. It's not how you're like anybody else, it's how you are different. Author, multi-million dollar New York Times bestselling author Jensen Charo also says it's your job to be you. That's why we're here, to learn how to become the truest expressions of yourself. So we are at January 11, 2024. Do you have your goals written down? Do you know what you want to achieve this year, 3, 5, 10 years from now? I'm going to ask you a question, and that is, how can you measure success if you don't have a goal? I'm going to invite you to write that down, because the universal language is not symbolism. Pardon me, the universal language is not love, it's symbolism. It's the prayer, it's the genuflection, it's the high five. It's showing, the symbol shows your commitment. So here's a great quote: the biggest difference between a millionaire and a billionaire is the billionaire writes their goals down twice a day. Tony Robbins says this: setting goals is the first step in turning the invisible to visible. So I invite you to write down your goals. And then let's do a quick exercise. I'd like everybody to think about the one thing that you desire most this year. Is it a car, a big deal, investor? So work with me on this exercise. See yourself in that car. See that money in your account. See your name written up as in Money Magazine or appearing on MSN. Because this is an interesting fact, your mind actually doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. If you serve up the imagery and along with it the energy of what it feels like to have that thing that you desire, your mind will find a way to make it real. This is because of the reticular activating system in your brain. It focuses your attention to be more alert and aware of the things that you decide are important to you. And let's drive that point home a little bit further. Brian Tracy, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Brian Tracy. If you're not, I highly recommend as an entrepreneur to go ahead and chase him down and read, take some courses. He is the godfather of professional and personal development, of sales development, of leadership. He's written over 90 books. He has done numerous workshops, courses about becoming successful, wealthy, and entrepreneur in terms of business success. So what he talks about is that you become what you think you are. Whatever you focus on in your mind, most of the time is what you become. So his advice is, wealthy people fill their minds and images and thoughts of affluence, success, productivity. They fill their minds with these thoughts that feed that same kind of feeling and activates the reticular activating system to focus on it more. So the question is then, what do you think poor people think about most of the time? They're thinking about how little money I have. I don't have this, and my poverty, I wish I had this. So if your mind is focusing on that, it will create a situation of you having more of it. So the advice then is, think like a successful person, Think like a wealthy person, study people that you admire who have these characteristics and see how they perform, how they act. And as Brian says, to achieve success, you must have a clear image of what that means in your mind. Get that mental picture in your mind and start playing with it. I want to talk a little bit about mentors and the power of asking. Let me ask a question. Does anybody know which whiz kid reached out to HP and asked for computer parts when he was only 12 years old? Yeah, I'm not reading the comments, so I apologize. Well, guess what? It was Steve Jobs. And he got not only the computer parts that he asked for, but he got a part-time job on the assembly line. As Steve Jobs says, I was in heaven, I bet. There's such a huge, powerful act of asking. It does many, many things. It, first of all, it allows you to share your passion and your interest. Secondly, it shows I'm committed to doing this. I really want to do this. I want to learn. So I would ask you who you admire, who grabs your attention, who rocks your world, and reach out to them. Tell them, look, I'm building my own empire. I would love to learn from you. There's a story of John Schoaf, who is an entrepreneur in the early 1900s. He mentored a guy named Jim Rohn, who became an entrepreneur and a millionaire at 30 using these principles. Pardon me. And then guess who Jim Rohn mentored? Tony Robbins. And Tony Robbins gives him absolute credit for making him the man he became. And, we're talking about mentoring, and I'm going to say there is a benefit to engage with older generations. Number one, they hold positions of power. The investors, C-suite, board members, decision makers, budget holders. So it pays off to engage with them using some of the tools we talked about earlier, by, in person, coffee, invite for coffee, by a little note. They are also primed to be great mentors. There's a book by Arthur C. Brooks called From Strength to Strength. Brooks teaches at Harvard University. He teaches a class about happiness. Matter of fact, he just co-wrote a book with Oprah about happiness. And what he says is for the first 50 years of a person's life, they are focusing on succeeding, accumulating wealth, becoming recognized. But in that second phase, after they achieve the goals, they are really interested in, well, how can I give back? I really want to share some of this life experience. So they are poised and they are absolutely primed for being the mentors to younger generations. Also, older generations have succeeded. They learn from their mentors and so on. So surround yourself with winners and don't be afraid of asking for mentorship. And speaking of, the NASDAQ Center has a fantastic section devoted to mentoring. You can either ask for a mentor, sign up to get a mentor, or you can give back and become a mentor yourself. There's a URL. We've talked about a lot of different methodologies and how the brain and technology has changed each generation. Now, I just want to do a quick talk about what not to do. I taught a class at Montclair State University a couple months ago, and the professor asked me, could you please do a slide about the things you don't want to do in professional business America? And the first thing that comes to mind is ghosting, okay? According to LinkedIn, the 3 reasons that people ghost is to dodge difficulty, either a conversation or a situation. I don't want to have conflict. I don't want to be involved in conflict, so I'm just going to ignore it. And either just lazy or I'm just too busy. I can't deal with it. So the problem here is that people network with each other. Investors network, entrepreneurs network with each other. And if you're identified as a ghoster, then it can impact the future of your business and your reputation. According to LinkedIn, utterly unprofessional. So respond, text, pick up the phone, email, answering, answer it, because picking up the phone means you have respect and authority. I have several HR managers who will come to me and say, I make job offers by calling, and if a person doesn't answer the phone, they're not getting that job. Also, investors say if a candidate doesn't answer the phone when they're trying to build a relationship with them, they're going to drop them. Uh, and the last thing is that, when the phone comes up, a phone call is not to ask you a personal question about yourself. It's actually talking about, let me find out about your business. Let me find out more about your services. Okay. And here we have a couple stats on why people don't answer them. All right. We've talked a bit about the way to each generation's heart. I just want to kind of summarize this for you right here. Older generations, they want to be served. They want respect, right? They want connection. Younger generations, opposite, are accustomed to self-service. For silent generation, handwritten note is absolutely, absolutely the way to go. And if you can, write it in cursive. Baby boomers are in person, knock on the door, pop in and say, hey, can I have a conversation with you? I have some ideas and I'd love to bounce them off of you. Gen X is, share your latest video game slay with them, humor. For a millennial, text them an invitation to a craft brewery. Hey, can you meet me? I'd love to have a chat with you. And Gen Z is about social justice, climate change. Show them that you care. Uh, okay, so here we go. Each of you know that you have a passion, a drive, and a vision. Entrepreneurs are literally here to change the world. Understand how each generation is wired by technology, therefore, they behave the way they do. Engage with these generations with the channel that they prefer. And don't forget to write down your goals to measure your success and also to leverage mentors to help you elevate your goals. And my last bit of advice is to create in your mind's eye what success means to you and repeat that every day. You have unique gifts to transform this world, and I wish you great, great success as you do so. Okay, so I think we can pop in to any questions. By the way, please do connect with me. My website is rekhagibbons.com. My LinkedIn is Rekha Gibbons, and my Instagram, follow me to get tips on generations and hear more about my business. And I'm going to stop sharing with that.
Wonderful, Rekha. We do have a couple questions. Looking at the pre-registration, if you have any questions today, feel free to drop those in the Q&A section at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We'll do our best to get to all of them. One question we did have that came in on before is, how do you market when you don't know if there's a specific generation? If you kind of want to get everybody all at once, do you have any advice, or is it best to kind of narrow in and focus on one area at a time?
So, the number one takeaway for that is follow up with the resources that are available to you. There's a plethora of information available at the NASDAQ Center, and understanding the thing that you need the most. Is it the marketing? Is it investor? Is it somebody to guide you? Is it hand holding? Understanding what your unique need is, number one, and then finding resources. If you have a network, there's a wonderful methodology called a mastermind group, and that is getting a group of people together to put their minds together and have maybe a call once a week, once a month, and say, hey, I figured this out, or I learned this. Sharing that with your cohorts who are in the same position that you are is powerful. Oh yeah, I'm glad to share the nuggets about the baby boomers. And I do call myself an OG. Look for my book about the OG's Guide to the Multi-Generation Workplace coming soon.
Absolutely. I'm excited for that one, I will say.
And the book that I mentioned by the Harvard business person is called From Strength to Strength. Let me see if I can type it in there.
And we will we can share that in the post-event follow-up as well.
Perfect.
Couple things that you mentioned that I had to take some notes on. I will be sure to include those. Another question that we did have here was, when you're reaching out to people via email, how do you determine what generation that you are actually working with? If you have, how do you figure out who's connecting with your business, and how can you narrow down to better follow those plans for that demographic?
So a really good way to do this is if you go, if you see who's following you or who's interested in your business, go on LinkedIn, take a look at their history, because their work history will tell you how long they've been working. And if they have a date that they graduated, boom, right there. So you can go backward and say, oh, well, if they graduated here, then they must be this age group. And then you know how to respond to them, and you know how to, number one, engage with them with the right channel, because I can't tell you how many times I will get a cold call from somebody on LinkedIn or an email saying, hey, Rekha. And I'm like, you don't know me, number one, and you should know that I'm a little older. Once we're friends, I have no problem. But keep in mind that level of familiarity doesn't really work with older generations.
Absolutely. Ooh, I like this question. Do you recommend that a business plan primarily targets one generation when you're getting started, or is it better to kind of cast a wide net across multiple generations?
That's a great question. And the answer is, who do you think your target audience is? Who's going to benefit the most from your product or service?
Absolutely.
So here's an example, right? During 2008 financial crisis, um, people were out of jobs. But interestingly enough, the thing that was available is, I've got a car. Oh, Uber. I've got an apartment, I've got a home. Ooh, Airbnb. So that's a wide net. But if you're talking specifically about a tool that will benefit a specific cohort age, millennials, whatever, then go to that market. And I would recommend doing the research to understand who would benefit the most from your product or service.
Absolutely. We had another question here that I'm just curious for your opinion on, with the hard starts and stops for generations. I always refer to myself as a cusper, kind of being on one foot in each generation. With those generations in situations like that, do you recommend leaning towards the younger, or is there a way to blend the marketing from two generations into an efficient plan to reach that middle ground?
So that's a fun question. It's a really fun question. So when I was giving a lecture at a university, a gentleman said to me, I'm supposed to be a millennial, but quite frankly, I identify as a boomer. And he said, I like the personal interaction. I'd rather have a talk with, over a coffee. And I said, well, there's nothing wrong with that. Number one, it doesn't just mean that you're an outlier. It means you are your own person. So I would say, to be fun about it, say, okay, technically you're supposed to be a millennial, but I'm getting vibes that you have a more wise mind. Can you tell me how you prefer to be identified? And that opens the door for a conversation.
Absolutely. I love that. And I love the idea of this can still be fun. This doesn't have to be these aren't hard and fast, strict rules, and incorporating some of your own personality into that as well. I love that.
And remember, the whole point of any of this communication, any of this engagement is, again, personal communication. You want that person to know exactly who you are and to establish a relationship with them.
Love that.
Oh, we've got great comments. I have to save them for later.
Yes, I will make sure to get that for you because there have
Thank
been a lot. I
you.
love it. One other question we had here was, more and more we're seeing paid memberships and things like that for even social media and groups and things like that. Do you recommend kind of engaging with those walled platforms, I'm going to call them, where there is sort of that paywall? Or do you think it's better to still, like with TikTok, where it is in general free for everyone to access? Do you see a benefit to one over the other?
Being in marketing, I would have thought it'd be one or the other, but then I recently read a book by Amanda Francis. She is a millennial who is a multimillionaire. And she made this interesting comment. She said, I didn't start out buying Facebook ads. I didn't start out targeting specific audiences. What I did was I shared content on my platform. It was Instagram. And I shared things that meant something to me. So it was an inspirational post maybe once every week. It was a photo that inspired her. This is the thing. You need to understand the persona that your business, as the founder of your business, wants to portray. That persona is going to be your wealth. Understanding, do I want to have fun quotes? Maybe you're not a TikToker, Jay Shetty might be the king of video, but maybe that's not the best platform for you. And also maybe you don't even want to be on video. Maybe you want to do a beautiful quote that inspires people.
I think we've got time for maybe one more question here. And just diving a little bit different or a little bit deeper into a single generation can still have a lot of variety and a lot of different, you touched on some of that, where you're still going to have some of that blending and all of that. So when we're talking about that, especially talking about if you're wanting to reach a global audience, because the experiences that we have in America are very different than the experiences that you have in England or in many other places in the world. Is there a way to kind of broad strokes reach as many of those people in that generation? Is it just authenticity? Is there a playbook? Is it trying to reach the lowest common denominator? How do you feel about just really trying to reach a full generation?
Yeah, and it might be that you don't have to. It might be that it's kind of the self-identifier. I'm going to share this information with you, and because of my cultural background, so again, sharing information about yourself. I have a three-legged dog. I was born in India. These are all cues, and you tell stories with them, and allowing the people that connect with you and resonate with you come to you, right? So you will attract that. But if you do want to specifically market, I would definitely say culture is a huge filter. It allows you to tell your own story. So if you come from a specific culture, food is a massive one, music. These are all ways where people can actually understand who you are, and they're fun, but they can then identify and join the game. You talked about, the cuspy generations. There is a generation between Gen X and Gen Boomers called Gen Jones.
Oh.
And they're fun, snarky, just super fun. And then you have Zennials who are between Zoomers and Millennials. So they, Xennials. And so they have their own unique characteristics. I think the ground rule is know the channels that they prefer, because that's probably going to be pretty true, but understand that there's going to be variety within it.
Absolutely. And then we had one more quick question come in that I'm curious for your opinion on. Is it okay to use your face as the face of your brand? How much should you be involved in promoting your company or your brand?
That's a brilliant question. I'm going to answer that personally. I'm a marketing executive. I've been in numerous positions from a temp all the way to chief operating officer. So I'm pretty comfortable being the face of business, being the front of the house. But that's me. Not everybody has that level of extroversion. Not everybody maybe wants to be. So that's totally dependent on a person. You could have a beautiful image of you, and maybe it's not just a headshot. It's you doing the thing that makes you passionate. But the rest of the information, like Yvon Chouinard, he never puts his face on anything. It'll always be a jacket. It'll be rock climbing. It'll be surfing. So it's the thing that makes you and your brand iconic if you don't want to put your face on it. But from my perspective, there's no faster way to get your message across at a personal level than putting your face on it.
Wonderful. I love that. Rekha, we have talked about, you hit many, many points. If there was one point that you really wanted everybody to take home today, what would that be?
Yeah, that's again such a brilliant question. I'm going to say this because this is a program and a business development platform. I don't see this enough. I'm going to say the power of asking is so beneficial. The power of asking, I'll give you a quick example. I have a wonderful, young man in our neighborhood who wants to develop his own business. And so he's going about it himself. And I'm like, why don't you come and ask me? I can help you do this, you know? And the minute he asked, boom, we just started going at it. And again, the Strength to Strength book by Arthur Brooks, older people are poised to give back. And it doesn't have to be obviously an older person, but the point is that asking shows that I have respect for you. I really admire what you have done, and I want to learn. I'm open to being a student. I'm open to learning from you.
Absolutely. I love that. Rekha, thank you so much for being here today. I know we've shared a couple links to find you afterwards. Do you have any upcoming speaking events that you want to direct people to?
I do. So I'm going to be speaking in end of January, the 25th, at Jewish Women's Federation. And it's fantastic because it's an older cohort. They're baby boomers and traditionalists who are confused by how younger generations act and talk and dress and communicate. So I'm really excited to have that conversation, to do that engagement with them. And then in early February, I'm going to be appearing on a podcast called the Hot Mess Hotline to talk about different styles in the office and how leaders can lead with different kinds of personalities.
Wonderful. Thank you again. We will be sharing links to those upcoming events if you are interested in joining to hear even more from Rekha. For today, thank you so much for being here. This was an absolutely great session. I feel like I have so many notes that I need to go over and rewatch. And thank you to everyone in our audience for being here today. We look forward to seeing you at upcoming events. We will share links to those in the chat. Wishing you all a wonderful rest of your Thursday. Thank you.
Bye.